Edward will kill me if I turn it off.
I just don't want to blow the start.
I don't know, it might be exciting.
It's a Marilyn Monroe.
I'd be one of these, You know, and folks, welcome. We're glad you're all here. We're glad you're in the cool instead of up there where it's beastly. We're sorry that Vlad and Olga are not here, but in their stead are Edward McCartney. Edward Lane McCartney's going to shoot me, and Sandy Zilker, both of whom, well, Edward introduced Olga and Vlad to us, and Sandy has known Olga. This is an Olga. This is an Edward Lane. And there's another beautiful Olga. Right here. Texas? Yeah, the state of Texas, exactly. Anyway, they have graciously accepted our invitation to speak in their stead because they know them both so well, and they will talk to you. In fact, I hope we'll have just kind of a conversation with one another about Olga and Vlad. Please don't hesitate to jump in and say, hey, I'd like to know so-and-so. I'm Jerry Hooks, incidentally. This is my baby, and this is her stepchild. This is Yvonne Garcia, my director, and Desira is someplace. There she is. There she is. She is everybody's right arm. So please don't hesitate to ask any of us if you have any questions, and we're off.
Okay. Welcome to Vlad and Olga's show. I've known Olga for about 13 years. I've taken classes with Olga over that time in both jewelry and collage and assemblage. I met Vlad in 2011 Photo Fest here in town when the theme was Russian photography, and Olga was a translator at that time, and that's how she met Vlad. And Vlad at that time he was primarily a photographer at that time, and he was a member of a group called the Shiloh Group, which was a group of young artists out of the Ukraine of many disciplines, and they did performance art, and you can join their group and look at it online and see some of their performances and find out what they're about. But Olga brought the group to school and introduced them to us, and then later she brought Vlad to my home, and we were looking at his work and having this translation back and forth because he spoke no English at that time. And I remember David walked in and wanted to know what this Russian language was going on in our living room. And so he came in and found us there. Let's see. Olga and I Olga's primary medium is free poured cast aluminum. And well, let me go back. She and I have been in the jewelry world for quite some time, and we have shown nationally and internationally our work in group shows together over the years. Vlad's work is held in many private collections and some public collections, like the Kyoto Museum of Photographic Arts in Japan, the Museum of Modern Art of Rio de Janeiro, the Museum of Organic Culture, Moscow, Russia, the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston, the State Art Gallery, the Museum of Photography in Perm, Russia. The work that Vlad brought to the U.S. the first time was his series on negatives preserved, and that's what started the whole thing. And they were cabinet cards like this from the turn of the century that he scanned the cards and he preserved them The cards came with a motto in the back that the negatives were always stored so that you could always retrieve the image. And he wanted to manipulate and make these images live again, but he also wanted to preserve that notion that they could always be revived from the original. So he scanned them. I'll read you a quote, what he said. In keeping with the motto, negatives preserved, I scanned the photos in order to preserve the original image and then began altering the prints in an attempt to revive them. I colored them, erased the emulsion, and applied drawings as a way to enter into their subconscious, to reach into their soul and give them new life. The more I worked on them, the less of the photograph remained. In another 100 years, someone else finds them and adds yet another layer of interpretation over mine. It will mean another lifespan for these photos and new memories of the people in them. Eternal life, endless memories, negatives are preserved. I think it's interesting that Vlad's primary career is he's a maxillofacial reconstructive surgeon. And so his vocation in life is to reconstruct images and give them new life on human beings. And he's doing that in his work as well. And that's where the collaborative took off. And I'm going to let Sandy ease into that.
For those of you I don't know, the reason I'm here is because I've been Olga's drawing teacher for all these many years. And so I'm going to speak in two voices.
May I jump in quickly? Because I failed to do something in the beginning. And that was read a little bit about Sandy's credentials.
I can say that.
Sandy is head of jewelry and enamel and 3D design at the Glass House School, and exhibitions and events. And in her spare time, she comes and talks for us. Edward is president of the Houston Center for Craft, along with being a very active artist who happens to be represented by Successful Young. I'm sorry.
Good plug.
So I'm going to speak in two voices, and one of those voices is my voice, giving you some background on Olga from the standpoint of her teacher. And the other voice is going to be Olga's voice, and I apologize that I do not have the right accent to speak in her voice.
Or as fast.
But when I speak in her words, you can just imagine me tall, slender, straight brown hair, and an accent. So to have, I felt like describing Olga as a student would give you some kind of insight into her work. And it has been a pretty amazing experience to work with her. It has been, I don't know how many years, but you say 13. A lot of years. So I came up with words that I would use to describe her as a student and also as an artist, that she's very inventive, highly intellectual. She seeks investigation of ideas. And along with that, she wants to challenge other people, and she wants to be challenged. We have some pretty lively discussions in that class because of that, and I say that in the most positive way. She is very passionate about what she does. Those of you who know Olga well know that she is very articulate, extremely articulate, so I feel a little nervous speaking for her, but I do have some of her own words. But she, as she gets more and more excited about what she's talking about with her work, she talks faster and faster, and we understand this. But she really expresses that passion with a very, and very articulate in a language that's not her first language. She's very focused, and one of the things I talk about with her being focused is that she has taken a process that Edward mentioned, this pouring of the aluminum. Aluminum that initially started out as cat food cans, and she would melt them down, and now she's gone on to ladders and I don't know what and that transformation of the material is really important to her. So that focus that she has invented and reinvented a palette with a certain material, and you see that in every one of her pieces that's here, just about all of them, maybe a few that don't. So that when you combine that focus with the desire to be challenged, I think you can get a very exciting and sometimes even volatile in a really good way mix. So she's been part of an advanced class that is full of people who are very developed in their own artwork, and so it's really like every week we're pretty much having you know, a critique, and it's pretty exciting, and it's pretty, I can't ever prepare for it. You know, I never know what's going to happen in that class, which is good, but sometimes I don't feel quite prepared. But so I've had the opportunity to see this work evolve, to see where she started. You've seen a few of her jewelry pieces, and she started with making jewelry, and that work evolved. Edward and I were, when we were talking about how we would talk about their work, we kind of noted that both of them were influenced by each other in terms of 2D and 3D. And that was an interesting exchange that happened. I also feel like Olga started to take collage and assemblage with Charlotte Cosgrove, and I think that really also enlarged and changed the way she works. So, what else do I want to say about her as a student? I guess I'm describing Olga from my standpoint. I don't know whether we now want to talk about some of this work that I don't know if you've noticed, those of you who haven't seen this show carefully, but some of the work is each of theirs individually, and some of it is collaborative, and it really works so well together that it's hard to tell that unless you're really paying attention. One of the things I also wanted to say about her collaborative work is that I was always really impressed as she was working on these pieces how respectful she was of her collaborator. She often would say, well, I need to respect, you know, what he did. This was a long-distance collaboration, which made it even more interesting. And so she would come in with these images that Glad had worked on, and then she would work on them. So I think that's an interesting way to collaborate, as opposed to the kind of collaboration that happens right there with two people more present. So,
Their first work together, Vlad had sent Olga this series of cabinet cards over here that he had manipulated, and we watched those develop over a period of time, but whereas Vlad is a more spontaneous and sort of intuitive artist, Olga is much more methodical and planned. And so they really, every decision really took time and effort. And what she did was, though, is she feels like she's given, whereas when Vlad manipulated the photos, he gave them a certain focus. Olga wanted to give them her own focus and maybe change the eye of where the viewer went and saw something different than the first artist's original intention. She also felt like she was giving these pieces sort of a living structure, an armature, a body to go with them. They share a cultural heritage, and I think that shows throughout the work that there's sort of this Eastern Orthodox iconography Olga was very aware of that when she started these works, and it was something that played to who she was as a person and her culture, and that she wanted to investigate more, and that the form of the icon itself was a way to focus on an image. The rest was embellishment. So it really, although the embellishment was fantastic, it really did draw your eye to a central point where there was the meaning of the piece, where the artist wanted you to focus for the intent. In that process, because they collaborated so intently and so tightly, at the end of that, she felt the need to take some of the cabinet cards and make them her own without having to have that collaborative process, so that she felt free to manipulate the images as she wanted to, and to put her focus on them. And in this series, that's what she's done. And instead of what Vlad does with the drawing and the painting and the erasing, she has used her medium of metal found objects, and she has created sort of a new focus on these works. I think that for both of them, it's a layering process that they're interested in, and I think it's a process about meaning. And I can talk a little more about the Tretyakov series, or do you want to say something?
I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention these. Well, first of all, I wanted to actually use my older voice and quote, because she is so articulate, and I didn't think you probably wanted me to read her statement, but I was very tempted to do that because it's so articulate. She says, in talking about transforming the aluminum, she says, it is as if during recycling an object not only assumes a second life, but reveals its true identity. During my investigation of aluminum as material, one major thread has emerged which governs my creative process. What is internal and what is external? What is inside and what is outside? She says, and my part of the collaboration means to no end, I assign the viewer the role of decoder and challenge him to look at many levels of these portraits when forming a final impression. I have further altered the images by placing accents on them and building multi-level structures to enclose them. These structures reflect my reckoning of faint memories lurking in the subconscious of these photographs. So I certainly couldn't say it better than that. I'd like the viewer to treat the image like some text recorded in an unknown language, which can be interpreted on different levels depending on his life experience and imagination. Then I wanted to mention the pieces. But these pieces that look like
pointer, Sandy? Want a pointer?
no, I'll just these pieces that are kind of the crowns or the head pieces. These came from something that seems, she says, has disappeared in Russian culture. That each village or community had their own style of a wedding headdress. I was trying to, not hat, but headdress. And this really disturbs her. And so these pieces are about, I think, capturing that. She wrote that she had, her mother, I think, had only seen one person wearing them, and she had seen no one. So they don't even really exist except in a museum or archival situation. And I think those evolved from, this and this that you really see being worn, to combining those with the icon imagery. So that here you, the viewer, become part of that piece and that image. Her newer pieces and the pieces that are her independent work that came out of the collaboration, I love seeing those. I love seeing what happened. They start here, you go over there with his work, and then to see just, I never said this to her, and she might not think of them as being hairs, but I kind of think of them as hairs, and I think of them the way that they move the eye outside of that frame. And look at to use that word she doesn't like, but look at all of her pieces. There is a structure around it, and very much part of the piece. And I just think that's a really interesting evolution. That linear element and structure that leads your eyes. This one in particular, this thing works so well. So I find just their use of the materials and the details. The details of all this. This is probably what, when you start out as a jeweler, I think it gives you a sense of detail. No matter what you go on and do, it just imprints you with the importance of detail, and you see that in her work, whether you know or care about the technique or not.
Well, related to the idea of her jewelry background, I wonder if she would prefer setting to frame. It's like a setting.
That's a good idea.
She set jewels.
Yeah. Well, Edward and I were talking about that her jewelry, it's like her jewelry, and I see another piece that's all right, had become so large and very dimensional, and in a way it leapt off the body and onto the wall. So it was in many ways, I think, a very natural progression, probably encouraged by her collaborative work.
Did you have a question, Kurt?
Yeah, I did. I wondered what you knew about their process, their collaborative process, how many times these pieces passed back and forth, or if they did it with images? Or?
They did not. They did it with images and email, and yes. So they weren't in a studio with each other,
right,
doing a little bit here and a little bit there. So he did the manipulation of the cards, sent them to her, and she did the outward manipulation with the additive processes.
But she never sent them back.
But she never sent them back. She only sent images back, and she sent images back in progress.
Yeah.
I've done this, and they would say, oh, and there was a real dialogue back and forth, and it took quite a bit of time to resolve to their mutual satisfaction a lot of the pieces.
So did any of it go the other way? Did Olga send stuff to Vlad?
No.
Or was it all started with Vlad?
It all started with Vlad.
Yeah.
Well, also Corey's here, not to put you on the spot, Corey, but Corey, but I will. Corey did a very different kind of collaborative project with Olga, so I don't know whether you want to address the difference in that collaborative process.
Well, Olga was an excellent partner. It's interesting that you mentioned that she's a lot more sort of fastidious in her working process, because the collaboration that she and I did involved a non-traditional metalsmith working with a traditional metalsmith, and I was the traditional side. So I don't know if that makes me like even more uptight. Olga's generally uptight, like she went to me to be the even more uptight person to work with. But yeah, we very much passed pictures back and forth. The initial idea for our project came up very easily, and then it was just sort of combining our two different aesthetics together, which I think worked very well. Olga was always receptive and easy to work with, and just a joy.
These pieces over here were the boxes. I think that I keep referring to sort of icons in their work, and I think it's really, I think these are really interesting, and I love the fish and the resin. I also wanted to note that a lot of these boxes are iPhone boxes. So there is this contemporary culture reference to this ancient or cultural aspect of the icon. So I find that really interesting also.
What kind of boxes have you
iPhone boxes.
My
boxes.
neighbors.
So you've got sort of a real contemporary reference along with the Orthodox icon reference. And the I is in there.
I would be curious to know, and maybe Olga, I'll just ask her later, but since they both have a shared heritage, sort of Eastern European heritage, but then of course Olga lives here now, and she was working with someone living back over there, did the fact of their context here in America come into play at all as they considered culture and sort of the materials that they used in history?
I don't know. I think she didn't really talk about that. You know, they are undergoing sort of political unrest between their two nations.
Right.
And they have managed to put that aside and they're not too far away, but they're far enough away from each other in their world and political views that they can't talk about certain things or it will become an issue. But I think that it's interesting in that situation to find two human beings who have found a way to find common ground and do something constructive and to put something out there together. I applaud them for that. I mean, I'm not of either of those cultures, and I can't imagine experiencing anything on that level. Russia was born under, Olga was born under the Soviet system in Russia, and has experienced many transformations, and it gives her a very unique outlook. And sometimes when we're having a critique or discussing things, it's like, oh, that's where that comes from, And it's a very interesting point of view. And there's not many of us who can say we can experience or relate to that. So I find all of that fascinating.
She mentioned, and some of you know this, that advanced class that she's been part of, we have a theme every semester, and she mentioned that the three of them that were particularly significant for her, and I think you can see that in the work, was skin was one semester, memories, and structure. And of course, absolute thrill to a teacher's soul that that was the idea, is that I throw out those themes and themes that I hope everybody can relate to in some way, and hope that they can mine that theme in some way that's really important to them. And really every single one of them Olga does, because she thinks so much about what she does and who she is and communicating that. But when I read that, I said, oh yes, I see that in all this work with those three themes. Now she has responded to many other themes, but particularly well to those. So I wish that Olga was here to talk about her work herself, because she is so
she will be at some point during the run of the show.
She is so articulate, and if you don't know her, you want to know her and hear what she has to say.
Both of them will be here at some point during the run of the show, and we'll let you all know when it happens, and we'll have another one of these.
Are there any more questions? Anyone? Can inform you about?
Yeah, do any of these pieces go back to the flat?
Or
do they all stay here?
I don't know. They're supposed to all sell. And then there won't be any issues with that.
When you said the Tretyakov series, I thought maybe that was earmarked for the museum. No.
No. Okay.
Charles, do you want to
Thank
add
you very
anything?
much.
Charles lives with Olga.
Yes. This is
So,
It's all true.
do you want to add or subtract from anything we've said?
Oh, should I turn off the video? No.
You can always remove it, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to hear this perspective, because I've watched it from the other, it's like inside baseball. Olga is extremely diligent with her work, and she's to the point of being obsessed. And she's a perfectionist, and that can serve you well and it can serve you poorly. So, but it's just amazing to watch her process, and you know, it constantly amazes me to see what comes out. I mean, we talk about these things and she tells me about these things that she's working on, and she tells me about her ideas and we talk about them, and you know, it's just amazing to watch the evolution, you know. And I'm, you know, very fortunate to be able to do that, and to participate in some small way. So.
I mean, I think you've melted some cat food cans.
Yeah. I'm her technician. So, you know, I consult on technical questions.
Well, thank you all. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, my dear.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has